Yes, good evening this time in our own side here, and good morning on your side there if it's morning, depending on your time frame. So, have you heard about a claim saying that is a white man's book and that Christianity is a white man's religion? Have you heard about that? And most of this is perpetuated by the paranoid, you know, scholars of African history. And most of the time, they take advantage of many people's lack of knowledge and that lack of, investigative interest to really get deeper and try to find out what the truth is. So, and I'm going to run a series of videos debunking some of the theories that we hold in Africa about Christianity, about the Bible, and also about white people. We've been told a lot of, nonsense about white people and about Bible and about, Christianity. So, and it is time for us to do our own investigation and find out what the real truth is. Please forgive my English accent. I am not an English native, so I will try by all means to speak English the way I speak it, with my own African accent. So, first thing first, start with the Bible. Is the Bible a woman's book? That's what most Africans are deceived to believe by their politicians and by the so-called African philosophers. The Bible has never been written by a white person. In fact, the Bible was written it has been written in 3 continents. Let me say that. Maybe if I say it was never been written by a white person, we might not. But the Bible is not centered on white or black. It's not centered on any race. The Bible is centered on the way out of sin. God providing a way out of sin for mankind, irregardless of his race. That's what the Bible is centered on. So, and the Bible in itself has no scripture, no verse that justifies whatever the white person has done to a black person. And thirdly, a black person is not the only one who is a victim of colonization. In fact, there were a lot of atrocities committed by white people to white people that we don't talk about, and atrocities committed by black people to other black people. We don't talk about that because we want everything to be centered on the 14th century up to the 19th century. So we want to limit the existence of man to a 500-year history. That's what we want to lower our existence. Because apparently we should just talk about 14th century up to the 19th century. Those are some of the biases that you have in history. Because they can never talk about any other history beyond the 14th century because they know they will be proven wrong. Because before that, human beings existed, in fact, coexisted as one. There was no white people. There were no white people. There were no black people. There was nothing called white, nothing called black. There was a human being that coexisted. They traded, they shared technology, they borrowed word from each other, and so forth. So, Christianity was, first people who were called Christians were in Antioch, and that is Upper Turkey, Lower Syria. And the people that were called Christian first, nobody knows what race they were. The only thing that we know was that they were the disciples of Christ. They are the people that were called Christians by people who observed them by their actions and their way of life. That's why they were called Christians. While we are on that point, from there, before that, we talk about between 34 and 43 AD, the Ethiopian eunuch comes to Jerusalem to worship. This is a black person coming to Jerusalem to worship God of the Jews. And upon his return to Ethiopia, he encounters Philip, who preaches to him about Jesus Christ, how he died and rose again for the remission of sin, or for the remission of the sin of the world. And this eunuch accepts Jesus, and he goes to Ethiopia and spread Christianity there. That's why the Roman Catholic Church were expelled in Ethiopia, because they were not considered as Christians because of their doctrine. Because the Ethiopian Church, oldest in fact in the world, they know what Christianity is. Now, if the Bible is a white man's book, how come an Ethiopic Bible, which is said to be the oldest Bible in the world? Who wrote it? Those are some of the biases that we find, and these are some of the things that people who claim, who go on, spreading these false claims did not consider. Because if the Bible is the white man's book, how come do we have an Ethiopic Bible? We have an Ethiopic Bible, and it is said to be the oldest Bible in the world. We have Coptic Christians in Egypt that are said to be the first Christians before the Christianity went to Europe. The person that took Christianity to Europe was Paul and Barnabas, and Ephesus, Corinth, Thessalonica, Philippi, and all that, and all those cities. But before that, Christianity people started to be called Christianity outside Jerusalem. That's in Syria or Turkey, depending on how the world map has changed and borders and so forth. So Christianity has nothing to do with white people, and the Bible has nothing to do with white people. Whatever white people came to do in Africa has nothing to do with the Bible. And in fact, Christianity existed in Africa before missionaries of the 14th century came. The missionaries of the 14th century, what they came to spread was not Christianity. It is Catholicism, Anglicanism, Lutheranism, and so forth. In fact, we will say it is Catholicism and Protestantism. That is what the so-called missionaries of the 14th century up to the 19th century came to spread in Africa. And the fact that the people, came to colonize, we also colonized other tribes. In fact, we subjugated ourselves, we subjugated each other. That's why we migrated from Adamawa to come to this part of SADC. Why? Because we were fleeing subjugation. But when we arrived here, we started doing the same thing. subjugating another human being is a mentality of a human being. It has nothing to do with color or race. But follow me for more, and I want you to comment. Just drop your thoughts on the comment section. Let me know what you think. You don't necessarily need to agree with me. You can have your own different opinion. The aim is for us to discuss and, just learn from one another. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to as many as you can. Have a good night.